Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where just hours ago, the biggest movie news story out there was whether or not Wonder Woman could defeat Tom Cruise opening weekend at the box office. But then two things happened. One, it became pretty clear that she could, so it's not as big a story. And then two, Kevin Feige, genius that he is, came into the picture with not only a Black Panther poster, but a Black Panther teaser, which will debut tonight during Game 4 of the NBA Finals. And I, as will everyone, will be all over that. And it should actually dominate chatter probably through Saturday as well. He's so smart. I did a whole video on that already. There's a link down below to it in the video description. So let's talk about Wonder Woman versus the Mummy. Again, a battle that she will easily win. And I hear the Game 4 is probably going to be pretty clear-cut as well. So it's a weekend for easy victories. Although Marvel versus DC continues to be a really dirty fight. All right, so anyway, the Mummy, it was tracking to come in maybe at around 40, but those numbers were lowered, or that number was lowered, once we got the Thursday nights from last night, which were just 2.7 million. Now, you might recall that Wonder Woman, just a week ago, made 11 million in her Thursday night showing. So that just gives you some perspective as to how low that Mummy number is. So now the Mummy has been brought down a bit to be projected to open at 35 million for the weekend, which, to be honest with you, makes sense when you look at Tom Cruise's other opening weekend numbers. It's right in between Edge of Tomorrow and Oblivion. So Universal shouldn't really be surprised at all. And I think that a lot of this is also their own fault, because as I said in my coverage of the film, I feel that it relied too heavily on being a Tom Cruise movie. And then they got a Tom Cruise opening, unfortunately. They should have been like, why isn't this like the Mission Impossible films, right? Well, that's a very specific franchise. But as you can see, outside of that franchise, this is the space where Tom Cruise lives. And I think that Universal and Tom Cruise himself didn't do enough to position this movie well. You know, Warner Brothers, again, better late than never, but they timed the release of the ad campaign for the release of Wonder Woman just beautifully, so that they whipped everybody into a frenzy just at the right moment. And you know, again, it could have been too late, but it ended up with the timing being just right. And I think, you know, The Mummy, I think, was too early on everything that they did. And of course, those reviews that broke on Wednesday did not help. But it might be saved by the overseas box office, by the way, and it could even win the overseas box office for the weekend. It debuted in South Korea before the reviews hit, actually, as some of you told me from South Korea who saw the movie, to the biggest debut ever with 6.6 million. But that's just 6.6. As you can see, that's not a huge number. And the global box office continues to largely be an aggregate game, right? Or a regional game. We often have Asia, bound together. Only China as a country outside of the United States can really make its own box office headlines. That could change someday. And there are certainly countries that are very important to the aggregate, that are the big chunks of the overall number, like South Korea is one of them, Japan, Mexico, Russia, the UK, Australia. Those are big pockets of box office money. But, again, in terms of making your own headline, it's really the United States and China. And The Mummy opens in China this weekend as well, so it could get a big chunk of change from there. So we'll see who wins the global box office. But the domestic's going to be Wonder Woman. So the bad reviews didn't help The Mummy. Then the Dark Universe announcement that they made, which got a lot of coverage, a lot of attention, as I discussed with you. There was an unusual amount of interest in that. I think they did it too early. They should have done that picture that they had come out, with the whole cast. That should have been this week. Also, the Top Gun 2 announcement, which got so much traction. Tom Cruise made it too early. It should have been this week. And even American Made, the trailer for his next movie with his Edge of Tomorrow director, Doug Liman, that debuted on Monday, right in the middle of all the headlines about Wonder Woman's box office win. So that was a bad time to debut the American Made trailer. I didn't even get to react to it because I was like, must do movie math. So American Made should have come out on Tuesday or Wednesday, and it would have gotten more attention, and therefore would have, I think, helped this movie. And also, speaking of trailers, you'll notice that no other studio, this is so embarrassing, no other studio released their trailer to go out with The Mummy, to be attached to The Mummy. And that also keeps it from seeming like an event. So all those things, I think, have detracted from, The Mummy not seeming like a particularly big deal. Also, the lack of movie news this week. Things just are so quiet. You're like, wow, I guess nothing's really coming out this week. I mean, it's become in terms of the way the media coverage works, it's become that the movie that's opening on Friday should drive most of the coverage for that week. But that didn't happen, and that's what studios need to make sure happens. Wonder Woman, by the way, is targeting a $50 million second opening weekend, which will mean a percentage drop of about 50%, which would be very good. Expected, but very good. Again, if it drops anywhere in the 40s, that's going to be amazing. But at the 50s is very good. And it's having very strong weekday numbers, by the way, and it's already up to 150. In fact, its Monday and Tuesday numbers are some of the biggest Mondays and Tuesdays of all time. It didn't break records, but it was right up there, like number 2 or number 3. So that's fantastic news for Wonder Woman, and we'll have a great time on Monday with Movie Math. Now, as for Zhang Ziyi, here's an interesting story. Zhang Ziyi has just been signed by Legendary and Warner Brothers to be a major player in their Monsterverse. Talk about cinematic universes. This is the Kaiju cinematic universe, which right now is inhabited by King Kong and Godzilla. So she's going to be a major player at Monarch, perhaps their Nick Fury, and I'm so happy because I've complained with these films about their lack of Asian representation. You know, Ken Watanabe was in the first one. Jiang Tin was in Kong Skull Island, but she had like no lines. And even Ken Watanabe didn't have he had the best line though in Godzilla of "Let them fight." Fantastic. And sure, Zhang Ziyi is a Chinese actress, and you know, kaiju stories hail from Japan, but China's the bigger box office market, so they get the actor. But I'm just glad to see Zhang Ziyi get some attention. Fan Bingbing has been getting a lot of attention lately. You know, she had a small little cameo in Iron Man 3, which only aired in China, but she, of course, was cast as Blink. She's dealing with a language barrier. She's like, someday I'm going to be a major Hollywood star. And I'm like, really, Fan Bingbing? She said that like in an interview. And I'm like, I don't know. You got to work on that English language barrier problem because I don't see it happening right now, or it would have. I mean, you'd be further along, I think. But Zhang Ziyi, I don't feel that she was getting the attention that she has deserved for all the roles that she's done. And you might recall, of course, she already came over to Hollywood with the leading role of Memoirs of a Geisha. Didn't quite work out. That's why we haven't seen a lot of her since. But she, and of course, she was made famous by her debut film, or basically her debut film, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where she co-starred alongside another fabulous actress, Michelle Yeoh, who also I don't think gets enough attention. Frustrating. But anyway, Zhang Ziyi recently was in Grandmaster, the Grandmaster, not nearly as popular as the Ip Man movies, despite covering basically the same subject matter, although The Grandmaster is a very different type of movie. It's not supposed to be a crowd pleaser like the Ip Man movies are. They're so good. But anyway, I thought she was very good in The Grandmaster, so I'm glad to see her joining not only Godzilla King of Monsters, but also Godzilla vs. Kong. And she also is in the upcoming Cloverfield new installment, God Particle, which is coming up very soon as well, with Gugu Mbatha-Raw and David Oyelowo, and let's see here, also Elizabeth Debicki, Chris Dowd, so that has a pretty good cast. So good for you, Zhang Ziyi. Very exciting news. Now, of course, as we already discussed, the Black Panther poster is out, and the teaser trailer is debuting tonight. But Ryan Coogler, director Ryan Coogler, and Michael B. Jordan, who often work together, they are one of those famous director-actor pairings like Leonardo DiCaprio and Martin Scorsese, or Johnny Depp and Tim Burton. Well, they have already selected their next project. And of course, they are working together on Black Panther. Michael B. Jordan isn't the lead. Of course, that's Chadwick Boseman. But Michael B. Jordan is playing either one of the villains in the film, or I think, as we all suspect, the main villain. But you know, it's interesting. Chadwick Boseman and Michael B. Jordan have a very good relationship, a working relationship, and I'm sure a personal relationship, that has resulted in excellent films, Fruitvale Station and Creed. Although I have to say, and we're going to talk about their award situation at the end of this discussion for this story, but I just wanted to point out now, I do think it's interesting how little respect they seem to get from the industry, and I hope that will change. I hope that will change. They're both incredibly talented individuals. I don't know what's going on with the lack of respect for Ryan Coogler, and of course Michael B. Jordan took a hit with that Fantastic Four situation. I don't think he deserved to, but I also don't think he handled it particularly well. He got very upset about it. I can understand why he got upset, but you know, you just can't get upset about something like that. But anyway, also to be fair to Michael B. Jordan, he's also signed on for HBO's Fahrenheit 451, which is a big deal. That's going to co-star Michael Shannon, and then as for the female lead, Sofia Boutella from The Mummy. I'm so glad she's going to survive that. That's right, you sign your deal for your next picture before the one that's about to open opens, just in case something like this happens, right? So Sofia Boutella looks to be the female lead there. She's either in negotiations or has already signed. But anyway, Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan are doing a movie called Wrong Answer, which is interestingly going to be written by the current writer of the Black Panther comic, journalist and author Ta-Nehisi Coates. I hope I pronounced his name right. Okay, all right. So anyway, I always mix up how to pronounce it. I'm sure that some of you down below will correct me. But anyway, and I hope you do if I got it wrong. But anyway, this is a true story ripped from the headlines. And wait till you hear it. I don't know if I would touch this with a 10-foot pole, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it's going to be really tricky to pull off with the tone. So let's see. All right, so you tell me what you think. So Michael B. Jordan will be playing a middle school math teacher who was in Atlanta. Again, true story. And try as hard as he might, he and his fellow teachers, they couldn't make their students make the grades that were required for the No Child Left Behind program with standardized testing, because they argued their students, the children in their classes, were too underprivileged. They just could not keep up. And that's a loaded thing right there. But then it gets worse, because this teacher, again, will play Michael B. Jordan, decided that they would cheat on the tests, the standardized tests. And it ended up being the largest academic cheating scandal in U.S. history, and 11 educators were convicted of racketeering. So wow, I think that's like, if you want to tell a story about the education situation in inner city schools, is this the one that you want to tell? I don't know. I think it's really going to be very hard to strike the right tone. I mean, you want to talk about how the system was working against them, but then again, do you really want to condone cheating the system, right? It's like it's bad. It's like it was a bad situation, but it was handled poorly. Do two wrongs make a right movie? I don't know. We'll see. The real teachers in the situation are acting as consultants, and the film is being produced, get this, by Plan B Entertainment. Now that's Brad Pitt's company. He has two executives working for him, Jeremy Kleiner and Dee Dee Gardner. I think Dee Dee Gardner is actually the higher up there, but Jeremy Kleiner gets more attention these days in terms of press events. But it's interesting because you have a trio of white executives, white producers, and they have really found a niche, finding black talent to produce films that deal with subject matter important to the black community. And it's worked out very well for them from an awards perspective. They've done 12 Years a Slave. They've done Selma. They've done Moonlight. And I'm sure they'll continue to do more pictures like this one, Wrong Answer. And they certainly have very strong awards connections at this point as a result of all that campaigning, and in many cases, winning. That's 2 Best Picture wins right there. That's amazing. So anyway, Fruitvale Station and Creed, unfortunately, did not get any nominations at the Oscars or the Golden Globes for Coogler or Jordan, which I think is horrible. Fruitvale Station just got shut out. It was ignored. So that happens sometimes to somebody's first film. Again, as we've discussed before, just because you're a big deal at the film festivals doesn't mean everyone else is going to care, either audiences and or the industry. But Creed, as you might recall, got a lot of attention for Sylvester Stallone. He won the Golden Globe and then forgot to thank Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan, which I thought was absolutely horrible. Although a lot of people were like, oh, he's just old. And you're like, it was their idea to make the movie. Seriously? He remembered to thank a lot of other people. He didn't just go up there and go, oh, thank you, and leave. I forgot what I was going to say. So, and that's why I think Sylvester Stallone ultimately lost the Oscar, because of doing that. But there were no nominations for Coogler or Jordan, right? I mean, they didn't even have the chance to maybe win. So I think that's maybe what they're trying to do with Wrong Answer, and they think that Plan B has the track record to maybe facilitate at least some nominations for them. I think it's time, at least for Ryan Coogler, to get a nomination. Maybe for Black Panther. Let's see how good a job he does. I think he's an incredibly talented filmmaker. So we'll see, but I'd be curious if you think that this story can be told in a manner that's not going to be just a lightning rod. But maybe that's what they want. But you're playing with fire then, literally. All right, so the viewer question of the day was a very interesting one. This comes from Julio Belda. So Julio says, hi Grace, I love your videos. Thank you. I have a question. Why did you decide to go full digital with comics? I'm very curious about it because I love buying comics in the store and having them in my room. Thanks. Keep working hard. You're an amazing YouTuber. Thank you, Julio. That's so nice of you. Great question. And I can understand what you're talking about. Who doesn't love or have at least, really nice feelings about the long boxes in their life, right? And I used to love having the physical copy as well. I used to love holding it, and I also loved spreading out a bunch of comics in front of yourself and being like, what should I read first? It's so fun. However, here's well, this is, I was thinking of going digital because it's easier, from an access perspective. It's hard to get to comic book stores. They're hard to find. They're often out of the way. And it's hard to get there on a weekday, no less, when the comics come out. So what I like about Comixology is while I'm sitting here at my computer, sometimes while a video is rendering or uploading, I can just go really quickly, buy all my comics, download them, and then I can read them anywhere. I can read them here at my computer for a quick break during lunch. I can read them, on my iPad, wherever I am on the go, on a plane, before I go to sleep. It's great. And they're always right there, and I don't have to carry around a bunch of, comics. And so it's great. I really like reading everything digitally now, quite frankly. But I wanted to tell you the story as to what made me decide to do this and was the final push that made me go digital and discover how much I liked it. Because I think that comic book stores need to work harder on creating a nice experience for their readers. Because here's what happened. The comic book store that I went to every Wednesday had a really bad situation where a lot of people would just browse through the comics and read them and not actually buy them. And so it got to the point, and I think this has happened to bookstores as well, which is why they don't do as well and why they're going out of business more and more, because of the digital alternative. But it's like movie theaters. Like, movie theaters are like, why is everyone watching movies from home? Well, it's not only the ease of getting it, the access, but it's also the experience isn't as nice at the actual movie theater, right? So if you don't fix the movie theater experience, that's going to push someone to go digital even faster. So that's exactly what happened to me with comic books. So I was at the store, and it became a problem week after week getting through the crowd of people who were just standing there reading comics. It's like, I can't even get through, and I'm a paying customer, and these people are just browsing, and they have no intention of reading or buying, or at least certainly they're not going to buy. Like, I buy a lot of comics every week. I usually buy, well, sometimes there aren't a lot of comics that come out, but it's not unusual for me to buy like 10 to 12 comics a week. So I was frustrated about that. But then the worst thing that happened to me, and why I was like, I'm done, was that I was trying to buy comics, and I would never take the first one. Because again, I don't want a comic that somebody's already read. I want a nice, fresh comic. So I'd always go like halfway through the stack that was up there. And so one day I took one out, and I just put it in my pile to go and buy. And then before I always checked out, I would go off to the side, and I would go through the comics that I was going to purchase to make sure I got everything on my list. And I was really surprised that right in the front of one of the comics in my stack, there was a footprint. Someone had stepped on the comic and put it back on the shelf. And it had touched all the other comics that I was about to purchase. And again, I'm someone who wants a nice, fresh, crisp comic. And I was just like, you know what? I'm done. So that was actually the last time I ever went to the comic book store, and I just went totally digital. So I'm curious if for those of you who also have gone digital, why have you done it? What do you think? Do you miss having the comic book, the physical copy? What has been your experiences at the store? Have you had anything like me, or are you having a better experience? And then also, are you on the edge of maybe going digital? And if so, why are you almost going over to digital? And what's keeping you from going over? So great question, Julio. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for tuning in today. Please write down below what you think today's top 3 stories, Julio's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered on Monday, and any questions, of course, that you might have. Thanks for watching.